do a roll call. If you could please answer when your name is called. Luann Grujon, Chair.
Yeah, I'm present.
Councillor Leslie Dunbar, Vice Chair.
Yes, good morning. I'm present.
Councillor Bell.
Good morning. I'm all present and correct. Thank you.
Councillor Cook.
Good morning, here.
Councillor MacDonald will be joining later. Kim Cruisenden.
Morning, present.
Alan Gray. John Tomlinson.
Yes, good morning.
Sandra MacLeod.
Good morning. Yes, I'm here.
Alex Stephen.
Yes, I'm here as well.
Dr. Caroline Howarth.
Good morning, everyone.
Dr. Malcolm Metcalf. Chris Littlejohn. Mike Adams.
Yes, here. Good morning.
Jenny Gibb.
Morning. Hi, everyone.
Jim Curry.
Yes, here, thank you.
Graham Simpson.
Good morning, everyone.
Maggie Hepburn.
Morning, everyone.
Shona McFarlane. Alison Murray.
Good morning, I'm here.
And Alan Chalmers. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Emma, and welcome to others who are also joining us in observer roles this morning. So I'll start with just some opening remarks. Last week, I had the privilege of being asked to present long service awards to health staff who had 35 years and more service. This included staff working in a wide range of roles across the system in Grampian. And whilst this, of course, was all done virtually, it was really great to connect with such a diverse section of the workforce we have here. One recipient describing herself as a shiny, polished antique, which I think was fantastic. What struck me, though, was how much pride there was in their work, the importance of their teams in supporting them over the years, and the care they had for their patients and their service users. And what I took away from it was, despite all the challenges that they have seen over 35 years and in the last 22 months, they have such pride in their work, a team spirit and a real care for our population. It was evident and so strong to see. So the position regarding COVID is not what we would have all hoped it would be in the lead up to Christmas. And I think we wouldn't be human if the latest developments hadn't left us all feeling disappointment, angry, frustrated. But we can still all do our bit, and the best way to protect everyone is for us all who are eligible to get doubly vaccinated and to get the booster. We need to just keep doing what's right and following the guidelines to keep everyone safe. We now know from our experience from the past that our actions now will affect what our restrictions we need to live within in the future. You will see on the agenda today that despite the pressures which have remained in the system over the summers, we have reports today demonstrating that the teams are still progressing with our strategic priorities. Item 11 is on the Stay Well, Stay Connected programme, where we see good progress around daytime and overnight respite care and other items. Item 12, we have an update on the commissioning activity, which has been progressed over the year. And item 13, the work of the Alcohol and Drug Partnership, presents a raft of additional activities. It is a credit to the IJB leadership team and to all the staff that progress is still being made and has been made despite these ongoing system pressures. So undoubtedly, we're going into very challenging months over the winter, and there will be real pressure felt across the system, which I know Sandra will talk to in her Chief Officer's report. So in closing, if you're working in health and care, whether your role or age, or whether you see yourself as a shiny, polished antique or a newbie to health and social care, I and the IJB want to thank you for your service. Your efforts are recognised by us, and we hugely value all that you are doing to keep us and our communities safe. So that's my opening remarks. I'll just move on to business part now, which would be, first of all, does anyone have a declaration of interest? If you could raise your hand. I need to declare a declaration of interest for item 13, which is the ADP, where we've been asked to make some decisions. I'm a trustee of Aberdeen and Recovery, which may benefit from the funding based on decisions today. So I will leave the meeting for this item and Leslie will chair this part of the meeting. I'm not seeing any other declarations though, so I'll move on. Determination of exempt business. Item 9, we have the winter plan and allocation of Scottish Government funding. There is an Appendix A with that, which is advised as exempt because it contains financial information. My intention would be to hold as much of this as in public as we can and only go into private if there are very specific questions on the financial details. Are people content with that as a reasonable approach today? Yeah, I'm seeing folk nodding. Thank you. Okay, so before we get into the standard items, we'll have a new standard item, which is putting on our IJB goggles. And we've done this at the last couple of meetings. So this is to help us just remind ourselves what we're here, what we're all about, and to focus on our integration agenda and to bring to life some of the strategic decisions we're making around integration. So today we have a short film and a presentation on our Agile programme of work, which helps people stay well and remain connected. This is led by Anne McKenzie, and Anne is joined today by Tracy Buchan, Health and Wellbeing Coordinator. So welcome, Tracy, to the meeting. I'll hand over to yourself and Anne, but just to remind colleagues that we're not going to have a Q&A on this. This is just to help ground us in the meeting, but I know that Tracy is very happy to have any questions follow up after the meeting today. So over to Tracy and Anne.
Good morning. How's everyone? Mute, of course, sorry. So I spoke to Emma first, and we are going to do the video first, and then I'll then go into the presentation. Just a tiny wee bit about the presentation. It was set up that it could either be done as a presentation or it could be sent out and people can read it, and it's self-explanatory. So more of a link to it as well. So. Someone said they were having issues. BT's just digging up my road outside, so I'm hoping everything goes okay. I'll go and share my screen. Okay, and we are going. Excuse me. There we are. Okay. Can everyone see? Because I can't see. Yeah.
We can, Tracy.
Agile, Aberdeen Guide to Independent Living and Enablement. We know that all the information out there can feel like a bit of a maze, where you can feel lost and overwhelmed, where it can be difficult to know which way to turn. Agile is here to enable you to make the best choices for you and your life. Agile. Stay independent, stay well and connected, stay informed. Agile is for everyone. All of the information is available in our brochure, which you can download through the website or via the link below. You are never more than 3 clicks away from the information you are looking for. Thank you. Welcome to Agile.
Oh, sorry, we shall stop playing. Right. Did everyone hear that okay? Yeah, that's good. Okay. And I shall now do the presentation. Presentation, and here we are. So I can't see anyone, so that's the
first. We can see Tracy.
Perfect. I'll go on to the next one. And do you want me to read through it, or is everyone happy just to read themselves?
Whatever you think's best, I think.
So Agile was designed to help people who find themselves struggling to live independently at home, perhaps as a result of an illness, diagnosis, hospital stay, or just getting older. Agile is a simple guide to a range of support services that are available in Aberdeen to stay independent, stay well and connected, and stay informed. Many of these services can be directly accessed without professional referral. Having the correct information to hand and where you can choose what is right for you will help you to regain some control. The eligibility criteria for care at home is high. We want to help people make empowering choices that encourages and supports independent living and for people to feel safe and secure. The Agile brochure is not designed to be a directory of services and is not exhaustive. So as you can see, you can, if you want any of your services on, you can go through Stay Well, Stay Connected. You've just seen the short video. And also everything's online as well. So there you are. And I will try now and unshare. Stop sharing. There we are. That is it.
Thank you, Tracy. And anything you would like to add to that? I think it's just really bringing to life some of the discussions we've had strategically.
Yeah, I think the work of the Agile brochure and the information in it, it really is it spans across not just Stay Well, Stay Connected, but it also starts to introduce some of the principles around the delivery of care at home as well, just in terms of people being looking for solutions themselves to self-manage, to sort of think about how they can do more for themselves and enable themselves to do more. But also it starts to speak about our enabling approach, which we know is a change for some people, and also starts to speak about a greater use of technology, even very simple aids and adaptations that can actually help people remain independent and look after themselves. This isn't just exclusive to Stay Well, Stay Connected. I think the beauty of it as well is that, as Tracy said, it's 3 clicks away, so it's been designed specifically with service users in mind, and also we've got almost like a looking glass. So on our carers website, this is accessible to them as well. So carers would, instead of having to come through and find out information from quarriers and then come into our website, they can actually go onto the quarriers website and be automatically connected into this. So we're trying to make it as easy for people as possible to navigate the system and access the information that they need.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Tracy, for doing that presentation. I wonder if we could circulate the slides to members and ask people if they have questions just to follow up. I'm sure there's lots of interest in this, but it's just helping us get our goggles on. So thank you for that short input. That's really appreciated, and we'll pick up some of the work streams later on in the agenda today. So thanks, Tracy and Anne. We'll now move on to our standing items for business. First one is the minute of the board meeting of the 2nd of November. Are people content with that as an accurate record of the meeting, first of all? Just looking for nods. Yeah, people, yeah. Okay, thank you. Do we have any matters arising from that minute not covered on the agenda or on the planner? I'm not seeing any hands up. Oh, John Cook.
Thanks, Luann. Yeah, there was, I think it was on page 6, there was a comment about we were going to get details circulated of the 300 folk being recruited across Grampian. It's not been that long since the last meeting, and I know recruitment stuff tends to take a lot of time anyway. So, I don't regard it as urgent. But I just wondered if we actually, I wondered when it might be circulated, or if I'd missed it. That was it.
Thanks, John. Sandra, Alec, is that? I'm going with what John's saying, that probably time-wise it's maybe not been long enough since the last meeting, but is that on the agenda for follow-up?
Sorry, apologies. Alex, I'll let you come in.
That was nicely swerved there. Can you just highlight the section in particular, John? I'm struggling to see it. Just just to see the 300. It was page 6, I think you said, but I didn't catch it. I'm struggling to see the 600 on it.
It's item 9.
Item 9.
And it's in the board resolve to second Roman numeral 2.
Sorry, Alex, I was telling you where it was and I was on mute. I apologise for that. Did you? I heard John Tomlinson come in. Did you get where John was referring to?
Yeah, I've got it now. I can see it.
Yeah.
It says notes that officers would provide further information out with the meeting on the split of NHS social care staff contained in the 300 whole-time equivalent workers to be recruited into health. So yeah, I've got it. So some of that is included within the winter planning report that we've got on the agenda today, where we talk about the additional band 3 and band 4s. That will go towards that total. There's a 97 whole-time equivalent in relation to there, and then the multidisciplinary team as well, which is mentioned in that report that's on today's agenda as well.
Thanks for that. That's helpful clarification. It's just that I sometimes worry that I've missed an email or accidentally deleted it or something. But no, that's great, and I'd say it was a minor point anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John. Not seeing any other hands up for matters arising, so if folk are content, we'll move on to the draft minute of the Clinical Care Governance Committee. Now, Sandra MacDonald is not present at the moment, but happy to hear comments or any questions folk have on the draft minute in front of us today. We have Caroline Howarth with us as well. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up on that. Okay, we'll move on then to the business planner. Alec, over to you for the business planner.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, on the planner today, we've, I mean, there's rationale for any of the reports that have been delayed, and all the other reports are on the agenda. There'll be a presentation on Operation Iris at 11:30 today, and Adam Goldwell's the Deputy Chief Executive of NHS Grampian will be joining us for that. One thing that we're going to pick up in relation to Chief Officer's report, but just to kind of discuss it here, is that we're going through we're about to go through a really sustained and difficult time for health and social care services in relation to demand, and we will be looking for the board's support to try and delay some of the reports in order to provide officers with time to deal with the response. So I think what I'd be looking for is to look at the reports in future months and work with the chair and vice chair just to see which ones of these that we can delay, particularly the ones that have come for information and are not actually really needing the decision. So if the board was minded to agree that, then that's certainly something that we would be considering moving forward in order to help support our response to what seems like it's going to be a very difficult time for health and social care staff.
Thanks, Alec. Are people content with that approach? I see John Tomlinson's hands up.
Sorry, Lauren, I wanted to come in on the workforce strategy bit there, just when you're ready to do that.
Okay, so we'll take Alex maybe general point first about the plan being to look at what items can be either deferred or sent as service reports, so that we're reducing the workload on the leadership team through the winter period. But also keeping a focus on the strategic priorities that we have. Are people content with that as an approach? I'm not seeing any disagreement. I'm seeing nods. Okay, thank you. John, I'll invite you in now on your question about the workforce plan.
Yes, just seeing what's written there and deferring that to October. I'm just a wee bit concerned about that. I do understand the kind of pressures on time. I think from the NHS Grampian side, there will be something explicit coming through around about April time, and I'm just wondering if we might get earlier sight of what's happening there, even if it's to understand the issues and the approach being taken. just seems a bit of a gap, given that the workforce issues are absolutely critical for sustaining our providers and ourselves. So just wanted to understand the logic around that, please.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I'll bring in Alec for this one.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the ones that we discussed during the pre-agenda as well. And obviously we recognise it's very important in terms of the response that we're looking at. I think the document you might be referring to, John, is something that I've seen an early draft of, which was a health and social care workforce document that's come out from the Scottish Government, and there was a draft of that discussed, and as I say, I've seen early sight of that. The reason why I went for the 11th of October is I wasn't sure when that was going to be published. If it's coming out early April, then we'll have a look at that and see where it is. So the 11th of October is actually, you know, we've given ourselves a bit of flexibility based on there. If we can bring it sooner, then we will. If that strategy comes out, then we'll pick that up as well. So I did think about June on that one, given that, but I pushed it back to 11th of October on that basis. Still, again, mindful of staff resources to actually go and deliver on that as well. So that's where we're kind of at the moment in relation to that one. As you say, it is an important document. It will help to support our strategic plan. So it will be one of the enablers that we will have this year, will be our workforce, our medium-term financial framework, comms and communications and all of that sort of stuff, helping to support our strategic plan as enablers to that. So it is important that we get that done as quickly as we can. And the reason for the slightly longer deadline was I just didn't know when it was going to get published by the Scottish Government. But once it is, then we'll look to get resources around there, providing we've got the resources available, and bring that as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you, Alex. I'm content with that.
Thank you. Okay, but an important one to bring up and air the reasons why it's there. So we'll note that if it's possible that it'll be brought sooner, but that would be the latest point, that it would be coming here. Okay. Anything else in the business planner from anyone? No. Okay, I'll move on to Sandra's Chief Officer report. Sandra, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. The paper you have before you is to provide you an update on our local, our regional and our national events, and I'm sure that people have had opportunity to read that. However, I would like to draw your attention to the local updates. It's really positive to note the continued shared focus of the IGB board and the leadership team on the importance of our shared culture within the IGB. This will remain a focus, as it's very key. It is key to our continued positive progress as an IGB and a team. Additionally, the board is asked to note the implementation of Operation IRIS, and as Alex has said, and I think Chair has said, Adam Caldwell's will be joining us at 11:30 to give a detailed presentation on Operation IRIS, so which will hopefully inform the board of more detail there. However, Operation IRIS will have an impact as we will be participating in that, and we will have a role to play within the Health and Social Care Partnership. The report highlights the request for the IGB to consider, as just been discussed, the business planner in light of this additional system ask of the team in its widest sense. I have, with the leadership team, undertaken a review of all current work and projects, and we have a prioritisation list of key IGB deliverables between now and March, and how this will be done. We will maintain focus and momentum on reform and integration and moving forward. I'm quite happy to share a slide set with IGB members post this so that they can have further sight of that. In addition, we've streamlined some of our other areas to create capacity, and again, that will be in the slide set. As the IGB will be aware, the new COVID variant is being modelled to predict a significant impact on health and social care, and we are working with and are part of the response to prepare for that. Key immediate pressures is the requirement to increase our vaccination capacity to accommodate the additional ask from Scottish Government to encourage as many people as possible to uptake their vaccinations and their boosters as our defence against this growth and impact of the new variant. This is a huge undertaking in a very short timescale. Latest predictions comparing current delivery across Grampian is a required 85% increase in current delivery status to achieve this by December. We had anticipated that we would have achieved this by the end of January as a Aberdeen City delivery model, but now required to move this forward. The teams across the Health and Social Care Partnership are considering workload against this immediate and highest priority. For example, we'll be open on all public holidays within our vaccination areas, and we'll have to consider what we do to redirect staff to do across the system to achieve this. For example, within the immunisation programme itself, Scottish Government have asked us to pause the 50 to 64-year-old flu vaccinations. Where we are at the moment is viewed as a public and described as a public health emergency. We are all redirecting resources to work hard to achieve this across the next 2 to 6 weeks. The Chief Executives of Nhs Boards have also received direction from Scottish Government on the other key priorities that we require to focus on. And that is 1, to ensure that we maintain urgent and emergency life and limb services. 2, that we maximise capacity in our health and social care system. And 3, that we support our workforce. We as a leadership team and jointly with the IGB are working through our planning, the implications of this and focusing on these priorities. Our system is under continued pressure and we are facing additional challenges. We will work in our roles to ensure that the Health and Social Care Partnership on behalf of the IGB is participating, collaborating and delivering according to current Scottish Government priorities and local impact. Our teams are tired, resilience is low and this is sustained. The ask of the IGB and of the public is that people are aware of all the competing asks and are mindful that each and every one is doing their best in these difficult times. It will impact as we're able to deliver services across the next few weeks as we have to prioritise in certain areas. I think if I could just ask the IGB board to just indulge me for a moment. One of our leadership team shared a post which I feel really reflects the message that I would like you to leave you with and to ponder for. So if you could just indulge me slightly. This is a small post. You are going to come into contact with an awful lot of people who are at their absolute breaking point this week. Friends, family, co-workers, teachers, strangers in the grocery store, retail workers. While it may be the merriest time of the year for some, it will be the saddest, most stressful, loneliest and most heartbreaking for others. We are all busy, but we are not too busy to be kind, caring and patient. Remember, the best thing you can give someone this season is love. Thank you and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Sandra. Open that up for folks' questions or comments. Alison Murray.
Hi, I think we all appreciate the efforts and the stress and the strains that everyone's going to be under over the next few months, and everyone's under now. It's just in terms of the report on page 26, implications for the IJB, it says there are no implications relating to unpaid carers and no implications relating to duties under the Equality Act. I don't think we can say that with any confidence at all. Indeed, I think we can say there will be implications for different groups.
Can I come back on that, Chair?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a point well made, Alison, and what I would say is that the direction, the report was out and published, our Chief Officer's report prior to information that came across. The latest information that we've had came out this weekend. So what the information I'm giving you is literally hot off the press, and what is totally different to when the position we were in when this report was prepared. When the report was prepared, we were making sure there wasn't going to be anything. The ask now and the direction that we've been given is entirely different. So absolutely agree with what you're saying, and I think that we will take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alison, for raising that. John Cook.
Thanks, Lan, and Sandra, I thought that was really well said, by the way. I'm mindful that we don't want to increase workloads, but I'm just wondering if the comms team could share some stuff, either with the IJB and certainly with elected members, that we can then share on social media. I think it's really important that we get these messages out as proactively as possible. I'm sure it'll be stuff, as I said, I don't want to create extra work, but some key messages that we're no doubt going to be putting on websites in terms of opening times, if we're going to have new pop-up centres and the like, and the cut staff who are at the end of the tether some slack. Those kind of messages, if they can be shared, as I say, without creating too much extra work, but if we can share them proactively, it might actually reduce work with stuff coming in reactively. That was it.
Sorry, through
Thanks,
Chair,
John.
that's
Sandra, do you want
appreciated.
to come back? Yeah.
Yeah, just to say
Yeah.
that that's fully appreciated. We'll absolutely take that on board and find out how we can definitely link in. There is a push on vaccination messages and what's coming out, and I think any help that we can get to distribute that as widely as possible is much appreciated. Thank you.
I would maybe add, I was contacted on behalf of the IJB from the head of comms from NHS Grampian, and they're seeking to make sure that the messaging that the NHS Grampian comes out is going through IJB members as well, so that'll come through via Emma, but we'll make sure those messages reach you as well. Thank you. Right, so we'll go to John Tomlinson next, and then Leslie.
Yeah, thank you. Notice on the national updates, there's nothing there on the National Care Service, and I appreciate the consultations being pulled together, but my understanding is that quite early in the new year there's going to be activity around that. Are we around that and going to be able to play into it as a partnership?
Do you want me to come back, Luann?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, John, we are aware from our links in with National Chief Officers groups and other areas, so we will be playing in as best we can. I see Alex has put his camera on, so I'm assuming he's wanting to come in and comment on this as well.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Sandra was saying, and we are starting to see some guidance coming out. So recently we saw some guidance coming out around about the commissioning function in the build up to the National Care Service. Intention is that there'll be a report that will go to the commissioning strategic commissioning board of the council, and then the same report will come here in relation to that. So there's been a guidance note issued around about how we kind of evolve into that. So just to give you a heads up that was issued at the end of last week, and we're aware of that and working on it, and we'll bring that forward. If we get any opportunities as to input into any of that stuff, then we will be making sure that we do so.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the report, Sandra and Alex. It's really helpful.
Sandra, did you want to come back on that
point?
I
just wondered whether, given the changes, and they are happening quite swiftly, whether we do add that as in our national as just a standing line in the Chief Officer's report, and that way if anything has happened, even if it's just a verbal update at the time, you know, if it happens after the report's been published, we could do that. Would that be helpful for IGB members, and it keeps it right up the front of our agenda?
For me, that would be really helpful, because I think it will move quite quickly over the coming months. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So we can take that as an action. Great. Leslie.
I'm aware that there's some locality work going on, and I think there's a meeting being called on Monday for community members to take part in terms of, I think, the whole support and, you know, like emergency measures. And I think it's really important that, you know, the work that Sandra's outlining through the Chief Officer's report, and maybe also reflects how we are really need to connect into communities in order to share the information. So my question's really around, a person in my ward actually asked me this very recently, in terms of, there was a call out for volunteers way back at the start of the pandemic. I think it was maybe more particularly NHS volunteer. I think there was some, I think from the public's perspective, there was maybe some confusion about who you were being asked to volunteer for. Some people certainly signed up for all that. And I just wondered about if any of that had ever gone anywhere, in terms of trying to maybe alleviate some of the pressures, you know, through having a, you know, like a volunteer participation.
Thanks, Leslie. Sandra, or I see Martin's hands up. Martin, do you want to come in on that question?
Yeah, just maybe to answer that, Councillor Dunbar. We're liaising with the council who are doing a similar kind of process ahead of this winter period. So we're linking in with HR there, as well as looking at comms coming out across the partnership, and we'll also make sure that that is similar to what Nhs Grampian is doing as well. So I think it's covered, and there will be some comms coming out to staff in the next couple of days on that.
Okay, thank you.
Martin, just a follow up. Presuming that involves ACFO and the volunteers that are already there in the third sector and pulling them in too.
Yes, so again, yes, so we had a meeting of the Care for People group. So ACFO were at that meeting, and part of our kind of COVID delivery plan that we previously had in other waves included the obviously close working with ACFO and volunteers in the communities. So we're just really kind of enhancing that and updating that plan to make sure that we're prepared as we can be.
Good, thank you. To see that point from John about sharing comms. Yeah, great, absolutely. It's about getting the messages out to as many different people as possible. Yeah, so there's an ask there from John that can we share the comms on the volunteering with IJB members so that we can use, we can use our networks as well, Martin. If that's helpful.
I can do that.
Great, thank you. Okay. I don't see any other hands up on Sandra's report. So Sandra, thank you for your report. We're just been asked to note that today, and yeah, appreciate the sentiment and the poem at the end in particular. Thank you. So we'll now move on to item 8, which is the Strategic Risk Register. This is following our workshop we had recently on this. Martin, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so the IGP have got their revised risk appetite statement and strategic risk register in front of them following the workshop on the 25th of October. So Appendix A has got the statement, and Appendix B has got the register. Since the register was last submitted to the IJB, work has been undertaken to edit the contents of each risk as requested by the IJB, and the risk owners have undertaken this task, as well as making revisions to the description of the strategic risks following the cause, event and consequence model. As part of the editing process, the risk owners have also updated each section of the risks as detailed in the report. The last thing I wanted to say is the strategic plan will be considered by the IJB at its meeting in March, and it is proposed that the strategic risk register be reviewed in full following consideration of the strategic plan. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Martin. John Cook.
Sorry about this, Martin. I think impact and likelihood is still the wrong way around.
Yeah, no, the matrix is. I'd take that on board. Yeah, I will see what we can do. I think, yeah, it's not laid out the way that it should be. So apologies for that, but we'll take that one away.
Sorry to be pedantic. It's blindingly obvious what the tables mean, but I just figured might as well get it right.
Thank you, John. And I think really keen that we do that full review once we've got the strategy in place and just review all the risks. Given the timing of that, the suggestion that we're thinking about is to have a seminar where all IJB members would be invited, maybe at the end of March, just to kind of sort of develop what the themes are for the what we need to take into account with the new strategy, and then mindful of time commitments that particularly our council colleagues may be having around that time. We'll maybe look at some small groups to take forward some key areas around this, so we can sort of split it up but have one session where we're all together. And that's kind of the thinking just now, but we'll come back and as that develops, but hopefully that sounds okay for folks. Yeah, okay, well, we'll keep you updated. So I'm not seeing any other questions. We'll just go to the recommendations then, which is the pack, page 29 of the pack. I'll not read them all, but you'll see them on page 29 of the pack. If people are content to approve those, we'll take that as agreed. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. So our next item On the agenda today is the briefing on the winter plan and allocation of additional Scottish Government funding. So as I said at the start, there is the exempt Appendix A. So if that you've got questions on that, if you can let us know and we can hold them, do that at the end of the meeting, but keen if we can to agree the recommendations in the public meeting if that's at all possible. Who's going to be introducing this? Is this Alec?
No, I think it's me.
Apologies, Anne, of course, yes.
That's okay, don't worry. Okay, so so the report that you have before you really is there to inform the board members about the funding arrangements, well, the available funding that has been made to the partnership and the anticipated purpose of that funding. So the letter came on the 4th of November from Donna Bell outlining the aim and purpose of the funding. And it really is quite specific around managing a reduction in risks in the community settings and supporting flow through the acute hospitals. And it's just one of many measures that have been put in place. The specific requirements for us have been to stand up interim care provision or make arrangements for standing up of interim care provision, enhancing our multidisciplinary team working, and also expanding our care at home capacity. The explicit amounts or the amounts that have been made available to the partnership until the end of March 22 are detailed for you. There was also further information within, I'm led to believe, within the budget statement on the 9th of December outlining some continued funding, and we're anticipating that the funding for care at home in particular will be made available on a recurring basis. However, the level of that funding is still, the detail around that is not explicit as yet. We've tried to sort of detail the plans for our spend in the paper, but I suppose just to add a little bit of context to this, before I go into those specific plans, this comes at a time where we know that there are significant vacancies already in existence across the health and social care sector, which is problematic for us when we're being asked to try and increase the capacity. So if the other thing that I should mention as well is that there is funding to be made available to our providers to increase the rate of pay for paid carers as well, up to £10 and £2 per hour. So just our plans for the spend, in terms of our interim capacity, we have a track record of procuring interim capacity, and that's well utilised within the partnership. We reviewed those arrangements probably late summer this year, and we'll continue to engage with providers. There are however, some more details about what we are planning to spend that money on. So the first bullet point, and there is a change to be made here, that the utilisation of 5 places within Ruberslow Park Nursing Home. The plan at the time of the report was for that to be to deliver capacity to the respiratory pathway, a whole system pathway. However, we've not been able to achieve that, and those beds are opening today to provide end-of-life care to people within our community. Additional capacity for the provision of interim arrangements within sheltered housing for people who require access to specialist bariatric equipment and moving and handling assessment. Additional capacity for people who've experienced an amputation and waiting for housing adaptation, and additional capacity for the provision of interim nursing or residential care. Within the care at home sector, as I have said, this comes at a time where there are significant recruitment issues, and therefore our strategy really has to be, whilst we will continue to try and recruit into that sector, our strategy really is about how do we retain the existing staff that we already have, and how do we ensure that we maximise the capacity of those staff to deliver care at home. So our current plans are listed within the paper. One of them being one of them about augmenting payment for people during unsocial hours and public holidays. looking at a collaborative recruitment exercise between providers, maximising our capacity through the enhanced re-ablement facilitator capacity and promoting re-ablement. Continuing a rollout of risk assessed care provision, including making a funding available for equipment to do that, and acceleration of the enablement model of care delivery. We have also, because of the reprioritisation that Sandra has also already mentioned, we have managed to secure some programme management support to coordinate all of this work, because everybody is operating at maximum capacity just now and have little time available to progress the changes. And then finally, looking at enhancing our multidisciplinary teams, looking at some community connective capacity, additional capacity within our allied health professional teams to review people's care packages, and additional capacity to augment the already successful hospital at home model of care. And that factors in a 24-hour response. As I've already mentioned, there is the move to £10 and 2p for adult social care staff. That's it.
Thank you, Anne, for that overview. Getting a lot of echo there.
I'll turn my microphone off, sorry, it's me.
Okay, thank you. I'll open that up for questions or comments from people before we go to recommendations. Okay, it's hard to tell who was first. We'll go John Tomlinson and then John Cook.
Okay, thank you, Chair. We'll maybe get more of this when Adam comes and talks about the GOPES, but my understanding is with the money coming in, wanting to get early impact on this, and on a system basis, delayed discharges gets a high priority, and you know, there's links to the programs of work here. But I think we may be quite a strong performer as it is within delayed discharges. So I'd just like to, I suppose it's the assurance of us in this moment in time when we've got such a very difficult winter that we're in, and we anticipate getting worse. What's our kind of expectation in using this money in terms of our impact on the current position with delayed discharges and further improvements that we can make?
So so you're correct, John. My understanding is that we do perform well at the moment against with delayed discharges, and you know, we would obviously hope to continue to do that and also improve the situation. I suppose this is, as people have alluded, you know, we're really not sure what's ahead of us going forward. So this whole thing is to create capacity to further enhance flow out of hospital and avoid people going into hospital. So I suppose those are the two direct impacts that would happen in terms of delayed discharges.
No, and I get that. I suppose it's and it is uncertain in terms of the modelling, but it's what handle do we have on the current delayed discharges and what kind of impact this might have? And maybe it's for offline for somewhere else, but I'm just thinking with the RAP committee kind of remit, that's a kind of question that we would want to ask, and I didn't really want to wait till the new year to ask it, but I'm happy if you want to come back to me out with the meeting.
I see Sandra's hand's gone up. Do you want to come in on this, Sandra?
Yeah, I can give you a current position. So from an Aberdeen City perspective, John, we're sitting with 24 delayed discharges at the moment, and there's a proportion of those, I think it's 4, I can't open it right up in front of me, but there's either 4 or 6 of those are code 100, which are complex delays, which means that they're either due to adaptations in the house or considerable complex, so adult support and adults with incapacity things, for example. The other key thing to remember about our delays, we do run at a really low level, but it's a number of bed days that's lost. So we have people who are constantly running, and the team will focus strongly on anybody who's in double figures on so our delayed discharges may run at that level, which you're absolutely right. We're totally, you know, we're one of the top performers in Scotland on this. But the other key thing to remember is that every day there's another person comes on. So the more flow that's coming through the system. So what we're focusing on is keeping those delayed discharges turning over. So the numbers may not change, but the people do who are in there. And I think what you're describing is exactly what Anne's saying is, that what we know is across Scotland, one of the top performers as well across Grampian and in Aberdeen for discharges without delay. So that's a really high percentage up there, 98%. We have really low delayed discharges, which again helps. So what that means is if there's more people coming in the front door, as the modelling suggests, that we need to help reduce that by looking at hospital at home and working, investing in there. But the other part is that volume will be increasing. So how do we maintain and keep us at the performance rates we are, which I think what Anne's describing, that's where we'll be focusing on. But to say, for example, that we will get to a position of 0 delayed discharges, it's so we've got choices protocols, we've got things that are in places that's not there. I suppose it's highly unlikely that we will get to that position. However, I would give assurance that every single day I look at our delayed discharges. I think our teams know that I look at that. Our teams are all over this. They're skilled and competent at addressing that. But the key bit is that we're expecting higher numbers. So to maintain that position, we'll keep pushing through. So hopefully that helps, John.
Yeah, that is helpful, and from our position, it's getting some evidence as you started to share there, and totally understand getting down to 0 is unrealistic. It's just us getting the assurance on the evidence that we're doing what is required in the situation. So thank you for that.
Thanks, John. And then John Cook.
Thanks. Yeah, a much more minor point than the one that John Tomlinson raised. And you were talking about, I think it's referenced in the papers, the fact that we're getting additional project management support to come in. Just because, where's that coming from? Is it elsewhere within NHSG on lesser projects, or is it from out with?
No, it's actually, as Sandra's alluded to, in terms of reprioritisation of work. It's the project management support that I have available to me, who is helping. So it's actually related. It's an appropriate use of that resource anyway.
No, that makes complete sense. You're just focusing on what are the priorities. Actually, that's
yes,
yeah, absolutely the right thing to do. It was more out of curiosity than anything, but thanks for that.
And John, just to follow up your question from the minute, so looking at this paper again, does that address the questions of the whole-time equivalent workforce numbers coming through, or are you still looking for more detail on that to be followed up, I mean, after the meeting?
I think the really important stuff is in this paper anyway. And it's just kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's afterwards. I'm not particularly unduly fussed about that, and very conscious of the pressure on people's time at the moment. So I don't want to generate additional work where it's not necessary.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was checking. You content with this paper answering most of that, and we can close that off as an action. Yeah, okay, thank you, John. Perfect. Right, so that takes us to recommendations, which are well, they're on page 4 of the different pack that we have on this. Are we content to go to the recommendations on this now, which are to note the funding and proposed plans and to make the directions as attached within Appendix B? I'll not read the full spiel, but are people content with that, and we're not requiring to go into private session? Yeah, okay, I'm seeing nodding heads. Good, thank you. Okay, so that's item 9 concluded. John Cook.
Sorry, Luana, I'm totally happy with the recommendations. I had some just clarification questions on the exempt paper, so we will be looking at that in private session.
Yes, if required, so we can add that at the end of the meeting, John. If that's
it's relatively minor clarification stuff, so it's no big deal.
Okay, I'll make a note though, and please remind me just in case by 1 o'clock I'm forgetting. But I'll make a note that we'll look at that and take that in private. Thank you. Okay. Apologies, I'm on mute there. Our next item is the strategic plan. Do we have Alison introducing this today?
Yes, thanks, Luan. I'm here. Thank you. So this report presents the proposed consultation draft of the revised strategic plan for 2022 to 2025. IJB members will be aware that this draft was developed over the course of the last year, and it's involved input from 4,140 citizens of Aberdeen, including staff. We also had the 5 dedicated development sessions with IJB and the leadership team, and the locality empowerment group representatives on the strategic planning group have also had a significant input into this draft. The proposal is that this draft will go out for public consultation in January and February, with a view to bringing a finalised plan for approval to IJB on the 29th of March. As per the consultation feedback, we have tried to keep the plan high level, word light, and very visual. The detail of what we are going to do to deliver on the high level aims will come to the IJB via the leadership team objectives as part of the approval of the medium term financial framework in March. So I think that's all I want to say in terms of introducing the paper, but happy to take questions.
Thank you, Alison. I'll open that up for people for comments or questions. John Tomlinson and then John Cook.
Okay, thank you. Alison's bracing herself and says, here he comes again. No, it's fine, and I understand the conceit of this document, which works in terms of that high level overview. I think it's then, I understand the annual leadership team objectives will take us through this, and I'm just wondering whether you think that explanation of how this will be brought to life through the period is clear enough, or whether some kind of diagram or whatever might explain that to people. And the reason I kind of raise that is that when we get to how will we know, and then we've got all those targets, that just seems to be joining that up with the very high level goals. There just seems to be something in the middle, and so if you're looking at that cold, you'd think what's in the middle. So it's just an observation in terms of putting that out, and maybe that will come through the consultation itself, but I just wanted to share that in terms of reading it.
No, thanks, John. That's helpful. I think if you've noticed that mismatch, then others will as well. So before the draft goes out for consultation, I can certainly try and make that link for folks. Thanks.
Thanks, John. John Cook.
Thanks, Luann, and Alison will be relieved to know it's not actually a question for her or on the plan, but it's a slight tangent. On page, I think it's 79 of the pack, there's a brief reference to the analog switch off in 2023, and the fact that that could affect people using telecare devices and the like. And I just wondered who or where in the system are we managing or mitigating that risk?
Thanks, John. Yep, there's actually a little project team set up to look at that. We've actually been able to make a funding bid to Scottish Government for support. They're actually providing some additional funding to help support partnerships and councils, and we're doing this jointly with Aberdeenshire and Murray as well, because obviously a lot of the technology is linked through the RCC, which is managed by Aberdeen City Council. So colleagues from there, colleagues from other partnerships, and colleagues from within our own partnership, and with Bonaccord Care as well, obviously, who manage and deliver some of that equipment for us. We are all working together to try and ensure that when that switchover happens, our customers actually don't notice.
Thanks for that assurance, that's helpful. And I guess it's going to be the same issue whether you're here or in Dumfries and Galloway or in Shetland. So yeah,
absolutely nationwide.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, John. Leslie.
Thank you, Luann, and thanks, Alison, to the ongoing work, a huge amount of work that's been undertaken with us. My question's really around some of the information that you provided around the health inequalities impact assessment. And I'm really just looking for a little bit more detail, Alison, in terms of, it seems to me there's two, you talk about how the assessments informing a targeted consultation, and that will be brought back in March 29th. And then you also talk about a dynamic assessment that remains ongoing to inform the plan and its development. So I'm just interested to hear a little bit more about, you know, how that goes or how it's going. Thanks.
Thanks, Leslie. Yes, the health inequality impact assessment was started way back, you know, when we first started thinking about developing this revised version, and it's basically, the reason I've referred to it as dynamic is that it is a living document. We refer to it before we do any form of consultation at all. So way back when we first looked into that, and I'll just apologise now because my home phone is ringing, and I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it sometimes means an interruption to my broadband, so you may lose me temporarily, but I'll keep going anyway. So yeah, so we looked at the us some areas of staff and the community that perhaps we didn't hear from on a regular basis, and you know, perhaps we needed to do or make a bit more of an effort in terms of trying to hear their voices. So that helped shape some of the consultation sessions that we did. And then after these consultation sessions, we then reviewed that and went back out and asked people, you know, whether there was any other, whether that was enough, first of all, and whether there were any other sections that we needed to target. So it's just been that ongoing process of continually taking stock, if you like, if we had done enough or if there was more that we needed to do, looking at the results that were coming back from consultation as well, and where that feedback was coming from, and again feeding back into the HIA in terms of, you know, perhaps there were gaps that we needed to address.
That's really helpful, Alison. I think it's great that the approach is being you know, kind of like rolled out in that way, in terms of, you know, that we're making really quite great efforts to hear seldom heard voices. I think that's to be commended.
It's always a difficult thing to do, Leslie. I'm not saying we've cracked it completely, and I think we're that, you know, that's why we keep the document live, and that, you know, I think we're always aware that there's more that could be done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. I've not seen any other hands up or comments from folk. Okay, so I would just want to say thank you, Alison, to you and the team. I know there's been a huge amount of work gone into getting to this point, despite all the pressures that we keep talking about, and the inclusive approach that's been taken is really welcomed. So you know, please pass on our thanks to the team, and look forward to the final draft coming back in March to us for approval. We've got recommendations for this on page 63, which is to approve the consultation draft of the plan, to instruct the Chief Officer to undertake now a 6-week public consultation exercise as is best practice, and to instruct the Chief Officer to bring back the final version of the plan, incorporating consultation comments to the IJB on the 29th of March for approval. So are people content with that? And I think the only bit that I heard today for maybe to have another look at is to clarify in the report the what will be done and the annual team leader objectives and how we'll get that reporting back annually on progress. But other than that, I think that it's generally positive comments. So so that's good to hear. Yeah, I'm not seeing any other hands up, and I think so. Thank you, Alison, for that, and thanks colleagues for your inputs and comments. So we're now moving on to commissioned day services and day activities. I know this will be Anne Mackenzie, so you can come in, Anne, and introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I was last here on the 25th of May this year to give an update on the progress against the implementation plan of the redesign of daycare and day services, which is now known as Stay Well, Stay Connected. So this is just a further update report on the progress made since that time. So you have before you updates against the different aspects of the redesign, which are residential respite and building space day services, and then the sort of the larger, wider early intervention and prevention aspect. So since May 2021, in May 2021, actually, we had a couple of provider engagement sessions, engaging with our residential and nursing care home services to discuss with them our ambitions around the procurement of residential respite. And following this consultation, we had interest from one provider, and we secured one place for the planned residential respite. And that started on the 1st of July 2021. And since then, we've managed to secure a further 4 places. In addition to the capacity within the nursing homes, we've also secured and confirmed residential care capacity, which has been re-provisioned across the Bonaccord Care estate. Within the report, I've suggested that there continues to be a level of anxiety amongst some carers around residential respite, and that is really while some COVID restrictions are in place. Service managers are working with our carers support service to develop information leaflets, really so that carers, there can be a good conversation with carers, and that they have all of the information that they require prior to going into residential respite. One of the factors that they're concerned about is that when people go into the nursing or residential care facility for a period of residential respite, health protection guidance suggests that they would go through a period of required period of isolation, and I think people are slightly reluctant or have a greater hesitancy around that, and actually we've evidence that has led to some cancellations. However, I'm happy to say that we have really close working relationships with our health protection colleagues, and they are currently undertaking a risk assessed approach to this, to make sure that the experiences of both the person receiving care and the person receiving respite are improved. We encourage people to provide feedback on their experiences when people leave respite, and we have had really good feedback, actually really positive feedback from that. During our market engagement sessions, it gave us an opportunity to speak to providers about some of the issues that they feel exist around the delivery of respite and interim care, actually. And that's really around the relatively quick turnover of people coming in, and also the support available from the wider multidisciplinary team. So we've taken a decision to have monthly meetings with those providers to try and work through some of the difficulties and seek shared solutions. Because of the success of the arrangements that we'd made, we have now extended the arrangements until March 2023. In terms of the building space services, if you recall, the ethos of Stay Well, Stay Connected was to offer people a greater level of choice in the way that their outcomes have been met. And this is probably, the shift is probably most significantly demonstrated or evidenced in the provision of what was buildings-based services. Kingswood Court day services are operational, but because of the COVID-19 restrictions, they have limited opening times still. And on average, there are 14 people attending the service. At the last update I had, which was a couple of weeks ago, was that we only had 3 people waiting for access to buildings-based services, which is actually a significant improvement on where we were prior to commencing the redesign. The provider also now provides an outreach support services, which is available on an individual basis, delivering on outcomes for the care and cared for people, and 15 people are currently receiving this support. So the balance of people wanting to attend a buildings-based service and people receiving one-to-one support in the community has actually shifted. If you can just bear with me, I've got a couple of testimonies from people, which it won't take very long. So one of the testimonies is a gentleman had a one-to-one support today as carer support, and that this had been a result of a cancellation and a spare slot for this support to be delivered. So I suppose evidence of responsive service. And there was a call taken from the lady who had asked for the respite, who just wanted to say a huge thank you to the Kingswood Court staff for enabling her to have a lovely afternoon with her sister-in-law while somebody stayed with her husband, and that she was very grateful to everybody. This gentleman currently attends Kingswood on a Monday and absolutely loves it. Another one from one of our service managers, just passing on some very positive feedback about a couple and the outreach support provided by the Kingswood staff. That there had been a recent review and that they noted a great improvement with regards to the couple's engagement. That the gentleman concerned provided some very positive feedback about how helpful the staff are, and that they've made some small differences which are enabling his wife to manage better, and has also encouraged the gentleman to accept more support. The couple had previously been resistant to accepting a day centre place again, but during the review they've agreed they would accept this now as they see the benefit of receiving more support. Sorry, I've lost my place. Just bear with me 2 seconds. I've got too many things open. So I think really in Appendix A you will see the great the strong evidence around the partnership working around the much broader early intervention and prevention agenda, and we have identified that there's been a lot of work done to date around strengthening those relationships and creating opportunities. And the next steps for the group really is to make sure that we are actually starting, or that we have evidence that we are connecting people into those opportunities at the most appropriate time. And that's everything I have.
Thank you, Anne, and I always appreciate the real testimonials from real people and how they've experienced it. I'll open that up for comments or questions from IJB members. John Cook.
Thanks, Anne, and thanks, Anne. There's a comment on page 87. Sorry, I'm in the also in the lose my place thingy here. Minimal evidence. It's paragraph 3.19. Minimal evidence that people on the cusp of losing their resilience are accessing the options available to them. Are we saying there that is that absence of evidence, i.e. we don't know whether they're accessing the options, or is it evidence that they're not accessing the options, if you see what I mean?
Yes, I do see what you mean. I'm not sure that I've got an answer for that one. I think the difficulty is it's so broad, so if we think about these people could turn up at any part within the partnership, and as you'll see, there's a lot of choices that are available to people. So I think that makes it really difficult for us to examine the evidence, and that is something that we have within our sites to improve next year. I think as well we've got some quite broad performance measures, you know, within the partnership. And what we would really hope to see is that the evidence about this really starts to manifest itself in those performance measures. So things like people feeling that they're supported, you know, in their community. And I think that's where we would start to see, you know, the success of this really pulling in.
Thanks for that. I mean, it seems to me that like we're doing the right stuff, but I totally get it. Some things can be difficult to measure, and I always take the view that just because something is hard to measure doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. So yeah, no, that's fine.
I completely agree, and we have had that conversation, and we're regrouping at the start of the year. And what I would like to do with the steering group is really set ourselves that challenge about how do we actually measure this. Now, it could be that we record the numbers of people attending those sessions, but I suppose it's how do we, it's about really trying to have all of our staff and the public making that connection. That's why it links back to that agile video. If you think about the context, we're trying every possible way to direct people in to those services. Yeah.
No, thanks. That was it. That was my only question.
Thank you, John. And I think it's the holy grail, the so what question, isn't it? And actually been able to demonstrate that one action has caused a particular outcome when people's lives are complex. But it's good that that's recognised and there's a clear work stream around that for 2022. So that's very positive. John Tomlinson.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for your report, Anne. What I'm just curious about is, I think earlier on with the pandemic coming in and the inability of people to move into supported day support, I think a number of providers were doing it themselves, and we were starting to fund some of that. Is that a different thing from what this report was about? I was, and correct me if I'm wrong, I was wondering, is that part of this program that you've got here? So that would be my first question. If it's not part of this program, then I'll stop at that and raise that somewhere else.
I'm not really sure which services you're referring to, John. We certainly had a broader range of more formal day support when we embarked upon the redesign, and you know we have a lesser support now, but as in building space, but we have greater choice. You know, we have greater opportunities for people. And so I'm not sure.
Did we not need to have providers looking after people with support during the day when they couldn't come into our
sorry, because
of the
COVID restrictions.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. No. So so there were a huge number of changes. You know, there was the whole lots of support being delivered through technology. We had particularly this really, the report is really around probably more around older adults. So certainly within our learning disability services, there was a mix of, we really had to curtail the numbers of people that were coming into the Len Ironside Centre, but we used our existing support services to do outreach. And my understanding is that whilst the Len Ironside Centre has greater capacity to deliver just now, that the model, there is still that choice available to people about, you know, how they want that care to be delivered. Does that help?
It does a bit. I suppose it's, as with a lot of things within the COVID experience, this seemed to be an aspect that might have opened up new learning of ways that it might be delivered in more efficient ways or quality ways. So I
think I have alluded to that in the report as well. So the aspect around the buildings-based services, that shift that I've described in that one-to-one support, that is new. That wasn't there before this redesign. This is new. and it offers a greater flexibility for people. So that has shifted and changed.
Okay, I'll maybe come back to that.
I'm not feeling like I'm answering your question.
My next question was us being able to assure ourselves on the quality that's actually provided through that when it's not as direct. But let me explore that offline with you. Thanks very much.
Well, I can answer that. I can answer that now. All of these providers are providers who are registered with the Care Inspectorate and therefore subject to, to an assessment of the quality of care that they provide. But the two testimonies that I read out were actually, testimonies from people who are experiencing the services. As I've also put in the report, anybody who enters into residential respite, we ask them to help us evaluate their stay. We didn't have this level of scrutiny prior to this redesign. So so we are doing everything that we possibly can to gain that feedback and assure ourselves of the quality. So I'm hoping that that answers your question.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to speak to you out with the meeting if that would help.
I think you're on mute, Luann.
I am. Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands up at the moment. Are we content with the Stay Well, Stay Connected update and the recommendations that are on page 83, which is, we note the progress and we note that the provision for outcomes of this model will come through on an ongoing basis with the key performance indicators for the partnership. And I think you, Anne, gave a good example of getting that and that regular data about people feeling supported in their communities would be one of the kind of standard outcome indicators that we have, and we'll be able to reference back to this work should be influencing that. Yeah, okay. I see people are content to approve those recommendations. Yeah, and again, thank you, Anne. Really impressive to see how well that's progressed, and absolutely the clarity on the developing the work around people on the cusp of losing their independence that's going to progress next year. So thank you very much for that. I'm noticing the time is now 11:24. I'm wondering if we would take a short comfort break and then we would come back just after 11:30, and hoping by then Adam Coldwells will join us to do his input on Operation Iris. So is 6 minutes enough? Do people want 10 minutes? What do we think? Just a short break back at 11:30? Yeah, okay. We'll be back at 11:30 then. See you all then. I'm just going to switch my camera off rather than leave the meeting.
Looking very professional there, Adam. Well done. That's it. The glasses are off. Serious now.
Adam, we're just all coming back from a short comfort break, so
Okay,
you've joined
okay.
at the perfect time.
Okay, great.
Just given a minute or two to come in. Do you have a PowerPoint or anything you want to share, Adam, or what's your
Not especially, I don't think. I've got some slides if they seem good, but not mad on slides. I was just going to talk for a few minutes, Luann.
Okay, I'll just check this back in first of all, Adam, make sure we're all correct and good to go, and then we'll get going. Emma, can you check we've got the right folk back in for being quorate for continuing the meeting? I think we have.
Yes, everybody's back in, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so we're all caffeinated now and ready to go, and perfect timing. Adam Coldwell's Deputy Director NHS Grampian has joined us to talk to us about Operation Iris, which is the approach for managing the system over the next few months. So I'll hand over to Adam to talk us through Operation Iris. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Luann, and good morning to everyone. So I guess where I'm going to start is we're as a collective group of the leadership team in NHS Grampian, we're visiting really key partners. So the Integration Joint Boards are absolutely key as a partner to work alongside us, with us, and cooperatively and cohesively. So that's we're meeting you and some of the councils as really key partners. So I want to tell you a little bit about Operation Iris, and I'm really going to refer to the formal board papers that were considered by NHS Grampian Board not last week, the week before last. And so again, I'll just not try and cover all of them, but just a few key points. And obviously they're available for you to look at and to see of anything that was coming in. But the real important outcome of this discussion is, I think, a sense that we're working together and cooperatively around this. So there's not a sort of a key question about that, but I hope as Luann, as the chair, brings people in, there'll be a sense that we're in this together and all pushing in the same direction. So sort of a bit of background, we're experiencing really unprecedented pressure at the moment, and I think really all of you will be aware of this and have experienced it either directly or through your contacts with people, either formally as an elected member with your constituents or indeed as board members or other people around the table. And we're seeing these in things like ambulance waits outside of emergency departments, and that's happening across the country, but it's absolutely happening locally here in Aberdeen. There's been lots and lots of narrative on the access to primary care within all the media. So again, people have been really frustrated by their access to primary care, despite us knowing how hard primary care are working and how well they're trying to meet people's needs. There still seems to be a real sense of challenge for people in that. We've absolutely got slightly longer cancer waits than we'd normally expect. They're not awful at all. People are still being treated, but they're not at the top end of the sort of area that we'd normally be in time. And if you think about waits for, say, surgical interventions and those that aren't urgent, then people are starting to wait a very long time around that. And in your own parts of the system, in the community, we're very aware that things like care at home are absolutely under pressure and people are struggling across all this. So there's this sense of real unprecedented pressure across the whole system, whether it's the bit that you as the Integration Joint Board are leading on, or whether it's the bits that us as NHS Grampian are leading on. So how are we responding to that over the next period of time? We've put forward a plan which has been called the Re-Mobilization Plan, and we're now on version 4 of that. And again, that's in the set of papers that that you can see from the health board's meeting the week before last. That sets out all sorts of things, but the world sort of keeps changing, doesn't it? And things are changing at a very dramatic pace. So I'll just say a little bit more about RMP4 in a minute, but sort of a little bit more of the setup. We've seen tremendous collaboration, haven't we, between the integration joint boards, the councils and the health board, I think is three really key partners, and then loads and loads of support through the local resilience partnership with the wider partners that draw on many of the organisations that you work with all the time in the third sector and the voluntary sector, and that sense of mutual aid between organisations. Absolutely everyone pushing in the same direction. I think the real worry going forward is that the system is under much more challenge than just as a consequence of the pandemic. So we were aware of pressures building in the integration joint board, in the health board, in councils, pressure building over a period of time, and a sense that our systems aren't sustainable if we continue to do things in the way that we do it. So whilst we're making the response to the next few months, and that's what the Operation Iris is, I'm really keen to remind us that we have this double track. We need to keep looking forward, we need to keep looking to the future, so that we're planning things that will start to get us onto a different system, a different way of doing things, and that's really at scale, isn't it? So again, your board has done some fantastic changes over the last few years. And as you know, there's more of that to come. There's lots more of that to come for the health board, and those are the big changes that we need to make. And you've got your strategic plan is out, isn't it? The city one. We're about to produce our one over the next couple of months. Again, they've been working really well together, the teams in both, so they should be very cohesive and sit together very, very well. I think my last bit in the setup is that, you know, in my mind, there's absolutely no silver bullet to what we're facing. We've not got something coming round the corner that's suddenly going to make this all okay. We've got an extended period of time of real challenge, of real difficulty working to make this the system that we all want to be part of, and we all absolutely will be proud of. So there's a little bit of that to absolutely come, and our strategic planning will be key to taking us to that new place. So at the board, the papers, the set of papers, and I'm just going to describe a few of them very briefly. The real key point of it was that we had this open, honest and transparent description of what we were trying to do in public, again, as this is in public. So again, I'm going to be saying things absolutely with the intention of being open and transparent about what we're struggling with and what we're trying to do to make it better. So within the papers, you'll see there was a very full data set that explains the sorts of things around weights and things that I've just made in passing, but also some real data to try and show how difficult it is for people that have these longer waits. You know, a real sense of some work that was done with some people waiting about how awful it is when you're waiting, even though you may not be in clinical terms urgent. These things are so important to us as individuals when they're affecting our own health, our families and our friends. So we absolutely understand that. As I was saying before, the RMP, the Re-Mobilization Plan, sorry, the Re-Mobilization Plan, bit of work absolutely sets out what we're trying to do, how we're trying to manage waiting times and things, how we're going to try and manage through with the COVID and all the things that we're facing through the winter. Sitting alongside that in RMP4 and absolutely part of our strategic intent is the idea that we want to continue to work with communities. And again, this is something we sit hand in hand with you as the Integration Joint Board. You have that fabulous relationship with the population of the city and have some really, really key leadership there that we need to work on together, in my mind, so that we're not appearing as different organisations asking similar questions, but how do we make that cohesive? And again, in the development of our strategic plan, lots of our planners have been working with your planners about things that you've already learned, so as we're not asking the same things, and we can draw some of that intelligence into what we do and how we respond. The final bit in the initial paper to the board was then about the governance of the Nhs Board, and that really key bit about how do we respond as a board when we've got this really high pressure. So in one way, it would be easy to think, oh, do we step back and reduce our governance so that everyone can get on? But absolutely not. We're really clear that maintaining really high quality and critical governance is absolutely essential. And so the board have described in there how they're going to continue to meet, how they're going to concentrate on key bits that give confidence and indeed governance for the public to all have real confidence in the system that we're working on. The board then had a bit of work about what's been called the Grampian Operational Pressure Escalation System. So the Operational Pressure Escalation System, or GOPES for short, GOPES. And this is absolutely a really key bit of work that talks about how we respond as a whole system. So across all the bits that we're all responsible for, with a single approach to pressure. So there's no point in us having lots of pressure in one bit and not working in a balanced way across the system. In reality, everyone's under huge pressure. And so how do we work cooperatively together in those actions that we need to take? The GOPES also gives a real clarity to staff and a transparency to the public about what we're doing. And the really important thing about GOPES is it includes a number of derogations, so a number of changes that we're making from standard best practice. And I'm going to talk about those in just a moment. And so we also need to understand the risk that we undertake when we make some of those derogations. So let me give you just a few examples of the derogations. So there's a series of derogations about bed spacing. So as we need to increase capacity this is a hospital example, as we need to increase capacity in the hospital, then we may need to bring back a number of beds that we took out of the system as a response to COVID. So as a response to COVID, we wanted to space people out more. We may have to reduce that spacing to increase the capacity to the number that we need to respond to, the number we need to respond to the demand. We've got a number of staff ratios that are standard. So a big government initiative over a number of years about standardizing staff ratios of how we look after patients, either as nurses or doctors or groups of any professional working together. And again, we may need to change some of those staff ratios, a derogation against our normal standard to manage the additional beds that come into the system. And then another example is as we try and prevent queuing at one point of the system, for example, as ambulances come into the emergency department, we may well need to have people temporarily under proper supervision and all those things, but waiting in a corridor as they make a transition to a ward. Absolutely not ideal, not what anyone would want. But again, in trying to make the most for the most with the flow through a hospital, that's one of the things we may derogate as we need to at moments of very high pressure. The risk of those is then described through a really clear model that we understand as we change this thing in one part of our system, what's the risk that we incur in another part. And that was made very clear through the board papers. And I think really importantly around this, there is a group who consider the ethics of things that we do in health and care, which Luan leads, and they were very, very helpful, helping to give some ethical consideration to our approach to this healthcare. Really key to that is that there's no significant disadvantage to any particular groups, and we have that holistic view of how we provide care. But that was part of the thinking for the people that were developing that work. The next part of Operation Iris that's really key is our leadership model and how we try and work in leadership terms. So in these moments of very high pressure, it's very easy to go towards a command and control system. And we did that back in the very start of the pandemic in what we called Operation Rainbow, and that worked very effectively. As we've learned through the last 18 months, we want to maintain decision making as close to patient care as we possibly can, which command and control tends to take it away from direct bit. So we're doing that, but we've learned lots and lots from the Civil Contingencies Command and Control response. So for example, the way we meet, have situational awareness, how the frequency that we get people to meet, and how we have things like control and stuff. So we've taken some of the best bits of it, but as a real important principle of leadership, we're trying to keep decision making as devolved in the organisation as we possibly can. And we're also working across what we've called portfolios, and we're very familiar with portfolio working, but again, it's this idea of trying to bring not sector bits together, but trying to work across whole pathways of care so that people aren't passed from different bits of organisations, but actually have a continuity through a pathway that we've described as a portfolio. So again, that was described very clearly in the leadership model. I'm getting close to the end. Sorry, I'm talking probably longer than you're expecting. So just two more key bits to speak about. The next one was about supporting staff. And there was a really clear bit for the board to understand around how we were supporting staff, how we were supporting people in psychological support, healthy lifestyle, breaks and rest areas, PPE, all those sorts of things, as well as a number of people that are working remotely and at home, and how do we still keep them as part of the family, feeling supported and able. And then the final bit was, again, that key bit always around communication and engagement. We're really clear about trying to get some really central and simple messages that will be consistent, as well as more detailed information as it comes and unfolds over the coming period of time. So that real bit. And then in engagement terms, I think I probably mentioned a bit about that at the start, but I'll say it again, so key is we're really keen to have this ongoing relationship with the population, absolutely in partnership with the 3 integration joint boards in Grampian, so that the population are part of it. They're part of our system and absolutely owning it as much as we can. And then my final sentence was just a real commitment in the overall paper to say that we wanted to be hand in hand with the 3 integration joint boards in Grampian, working together, and as I said in the introduction, all pushing cohesively in the same direction together. So Luann, thank you. Sorry if I spoke longer than you were expecting, but that was my sense of an intro. Sorry, and the end, not just the intro, the whole thing. There's not another bit. So thank you.
Thanks, Adam, and important to give this proper time, because it's really important for the months ahead. I'll maybe just say that I wonder if we could get, we can circulate to members the link to the public papers from the last Nhs board meeting, so that everyone can see the different documents that Adam's referring to. But we can absolutely do that after the meeting today. I'll just open it up now for comments or questions from IJB colleagues. So I see we've got Philip. We'll go to Philip first, and then John Cook.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Adam. That was a very comprehensive presentation of operational areas. So I have a couple of questions. You said that cancer waits would be slightly longer. So what does that actually mean? And what type of cancers are you talking about? Is it all cancers or some specific cancers? I think your microphone is off.
Yeah. Thanks, Philip. Really important question for people to know about. So we have pathways of cancer that measure across disease groups, so sort of head and neck or lung or breast or urological cancers. So they're defined across kind of groups of cancers. And we have 2 really key targets. We have a 31 and a 62-day target. They broadly mean the same thing, that you get treated within a certain period of time. The differences are just about how you come in, whether you come in from a screening or a response to something that's not right. So normally we work around a 90 or 95%. There's a couple of differences in some of the targets, and we're below that at the moment. So we're performing in sort of mid to high 80s. So we're not on the target. It's not sort of dropped down to 20% or something awful. So people are still getting seen pretty well on average across the pathways of care, but all of them are lower than our target level, which we normally maintain fairly well, with odd bumps in the road as things sort of happen, but broadly maintained well, and they're all lower than we'd want at the moment. Again, that's something we could share with IJB members, so there's an awareness of that and how that's performing at the moment.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is, you said that you're hoping to bring back some beds that had been removed as a consequence of COVID, but we still have COVID. So how will that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the I guess the key balance of risk that we're trying to do. So the infection prevention control measure is to have particular bed spacing, and that was increased with COVID. So it's trying to take the balance of risk about people not having access to a bed in hospital compared to some slightly higher risk of people being closer together. When we increase the bed numbers in a physical area, then we have a number of things that we put in place to mitigate the risk of spread of COVID between patients or through staff working with multiple patients. So there's a series of mitigations that reduce that risk as much as you can. So that's the derogation, is against the bed spacing, against the infection prevention control bed spacing standard, and that's that balance of risk about the worthwhileness of that. So that's one of the key ones, is actually bed spacing around increasing capacity. So that's probably one of the biggest derogations that we're going to do over the coming weeks and months. The beds don't all just go back in and stay. It's a dynamic situation where if the demand on the beds was to fall, then certain beds would come back out of the system. Now, my prediction over the next period of time is they're probably going to stay in for a while, because it looks like we're going to be under tremendous pressure, but it's not a forever thing. It's that dynamic sense of how we work as a system.
Thank you. And then my final question. So you were saying about beds, possibly, sorry, patients waiting in corridors because there are insufficient beds, but they will be supervised. So presumably with these additional beds that you might bring back on a sort of more dynamic basis, that wouldn't be the case. But my question really is, do you have the staff?
Yeah, so absolutely, Philip. That's one of the really big challenges we've got, is the number of staff we've got. So that's again part of the risk that we're trying to manage, is the number of staff we've got. Obviously, we're under the additional. The media's been full of it, hasn't it, for the last few days, and in all political briefings around the challenges with staff being off isolating with potential COVID or whatever. So that's our absolute biggest challenge on a day-to-day basis, is having the right number of staff in the system. So these are all compounding risks, exactly as you've spotted. As we have more beds, potentially less staff, potentially more people in the system, those are all the risks that the operational guys manage on a day-to-day basis. As I say, in formal terms, we've got all sorts of mitigations in place to try and support staff to manage that as well as they can, but it's definitely a much less ideal situation than we'd be in normal times. But it's us responding to this increased demand as best as we can. And Sandra might well want to add a comment. Sandra's very close to lots of the unscheduled care risk, and obviously has a really key leadership role in the flow of people through this system at the moment. So Sandra might have a better, more local insight than I do. I know she's there every day and weekends and things. So
Sandra, do you want to come in on that point?
No, I'm just thinking that Adam gave a really good narrative round about the pressures that we've got there. So yeah, staffing is going to be one of our key issues, but totally we're working with both our public partners across NHS, across the Health and Social Care Partnership, and especially across our external providers and volunteers to really maximise what we can. So no, I think Adam absolutely covered it well there, and nothing really to add. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you. So the evidence that's emerging very slowly with Omicron is this variant is obviously causing you complete and utter grief, and I hope that we get some positive news soon about it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for those questions, Philip. We'll go to John Cook now. John.
Thanks for that. Actually, and Adam, thanks. That was really helpful. Look forward to seeing the papers, or getting the link to the papers. Actually, I was going to say, can we have the papers? I was going to ask a question about the number of beds, and I was going to ask a question about staffing. But from what you've said and from your answers, yeah, it sounds like you're doing the right thing in a situation where at times you seem like, you know, between a rock and a hard place. So yeah, but I say my questions have all been answered already.
Yeah, thanks, John. And Luan, I don't know, just on the back of Philip's comment, if it's worth just saying something about the Omicron bit. No expertise at all. I was really going to reflect on something that Jason Leach, the clinical director for NHS Scotland, was saying this morning. I don't know if people saw it, but there's still a couple of really key bits that we don't know yet. So it looks like it spreads very quickly. We don't know if it makes you more poorly or not. But if it spreads well, then actually the small number that may need to come into hospital of a big number that's spreading quickly is still the worry, isn't it? It's that sense of how many people will be trying to manage through the system. So we've got some really early modelling data trying to show what it looks like, and I think we've got a briefing coming up with the council where we'll be giving an update on that and things. So but lots of that's emerging and not ever so clear yet, but it certainly looks like it's going to be something that's going to really challenge the system, I think, over the coming period of time. So
yeah, sure. Thank you, Adam. I see now we've got Leslie and then John Tomlinson. So go to Leslie first.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam, for the presentation. It was really helpful, I think, in terms of, providing quite a comprehensive view of, what's been put in place and what will continue to help us push through this really challenging time. My question's really just around, it's really important, I think, what you've highlighted within your report around the work with communities, working with communities collaboratively. It's a specific group, if you like, that I've got an interest in. So I just wanted to get some sense from you about how carers are going to be kept updated, because clearly they're a really important part of, the whole care package, if you like. And we'll have maybe some concerns around what they're hearing in the media.
yeah, thanks, Leslie. Yeah, really crucial group, and I'll probably ask Sandra to comment on the carers, because the IGB probably hold that space much better than we do as NHS Grampian. The only thing I'd say, if it's okay, just to widen your question a bit, if that's okay, in terms of one of the bits of feedback we're getting from people, absolutely understandably, but how frustrated people are who are waiting for operations in particular. And we're just literally doing a bit of work at the moment to try and think, how do we have a different dialogue with people that keeps them informed? We're hearing things like people saying, gosh, it feels like I've been forgotten, which is just absolutely not the case. And so how do we have that bit of ongoing dialogue? And then related to that is a sense of how do we have the proper engagement with people that are waiting, not to say how do we fix it and give you an operation quickly, because we physically just cannot do that. There's no, as I said, there's no silver bullet to suddenly treat thousands of people, but it's that sense of how do we support people, work with them, how do they work with third sector organisations, community groups, to be as well as they possibly can be during that really awful time of waiting. So that those are bits of work in those cohorts we're doing. But around carers, I'll probably ask Sandra to make a comment on that.
Thank you.
Hi, Adam. Thank you for that. And it's a really good point raised. It's likely that we'll put in, and we will put our communications through our carer service. So we will use those avenues, but as well as, I think that, as we discussed earlier, the during the Chief Officer's report, and I think that Councillor Cook had raised that, is that it's that bit about us being able to share all of that information and then us to use it in its widest sense across social media and things like that. So there is a huge pickup there that we know across Facebook, Twitter, all of these mediums, as well as then being able to share on our websites, and even as I think as we've seen when we had our IJB goggles on right at the start about the Agile, even getting onto these kind of websites and things as well, and Quarriers will help us with that. So really keen to keep everything as communicated as possible, and I think it is that bit about just sharing those consistent messages that we spoke about earlier, that was highlighted. So yeah, thanks for that. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. Yes.
Thanks for those questions, Leslie. On to John Tomlinson now.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I'm going to ask the question clearly with my NHS role within the IJB hat on, and distinct from being chair of NHS Grampian at the moment. So just to be clear, so derogations that you've talked about, Adam, and the approach is in the hospital setting. For us as the IJB today, understanding that and the whole system, are the derogations within the health and social care partnership setting that's being provided? What are those, or what might there be coming along? And I'm just asking that in terms of having transparency on that, and then obviously what our committees would need to do in the coming months in terms of any overview of that. So it's probably more directed at you, Sandra. Thank you.
Do you want me to come in, Adam, on that one? Yeah, so the delegations, John, I think that we'd already, so some of the key parts that we discussed earlier was around flow, was about our critical services. So within social care, we're already delegated and have been quite, well, not delegated, but we've already only delivered high and critical need within social care. So we already do that. That's not something that's changed actually pre-COVID to what's currently running. So we're already there. I think when it comes to delegation staffing, so the areas that we would have that are specifically within the IJB's remit would be across Wood End. So they would be impacted by NHS delegations. The other key areas we would have is Rosewell, should we have to move to delegations of staff in there within our, so that's an NHS facility. And the other key part is, as recall when we spoke earlier about the vaccinations, how within Grampian we need an 85% increase in our current delivery model to be able to do that. And how do we do that across the next 2 weeks, 4 weeks and 6 weeks to meet the target that's A, set by government, and B, our initial product. So for example, we've got a considerable nursing workforce, and it may well be we ask those, but that will have an impact then potentially on some of our areas. So I know, for example, the lead nurse is currently working and supporting on SBARs, and they will come through not only through an NHS governance route through the professional line from a professional perspective, to therefore have national, delegations there. So if for example, we were to look at health visiting, now we absolutely know that we need to make sure that we have a child protection and have all that services supported. If we're removing or changing nurses, even from any of that to work, then that'll have to be a clear risk that then goes through our, and would be through our Clinical Care Governance Board and through our RAP. Does that help, John? There's little that we're doing, and so the biggest delegations are about what's the criteria for access to service and what's the criteria for staffing. Those are our two resources. Within social care, we've already at that crisis level, and if that was to be moved, that would definitely be a conversation with the IJB, because that would be a case of asking families to engage with delivering services, and we're not at that position yet. If we get to that, that is definitely something that we would need to come through relevant committee. The other key part is about staffing and our key areas whereby if one person goes out, we're not at like a ward area in our community. It's already down to this is what we're delivering. So hopefully, I see you want to add on to that before I carry on.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. And it's the second part, which is then, do we think that we're geared up with our committees to receive reports on progress? Because it's that bit about transparency on the harm that there might be, and this is a unprecedented situation where we've got to make really hard choices that probably haven't been there in the past about where to direct, and therefore having transparency. So are you seeing that as the next committees will receive a report on that aspect?
if there is derogations that we need to look at and where the decisions is made, that would be in line with that, and we would bring that through, John.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. I might add a few comments of my own, if I may, if that's all right. More, well, for Adam, but also for IJB members. The first thing to say, just hearing Adam speak, is that we really take for granted the whole system working that we've got up here in Grampian, and I think we just need to recognise that we shouldn't take it for granted, because having been a member of the national network of chairs and vice chairs of IJBs, the really good relationships and the whole system approach we're taking here isn't replicated everywhere in Scotland. So really something to be proud of, and I'm really pleased that we have that in Grampian. So that's the first thing. Secondly, just going back to some of our conversations earlier this morning, there's a real ask and desire for IJB members to support communications going out. So Stuart Humphreys has already been in touch with me about cascading, the key messages about vaccinations, but also volunteering and that importance of kindness to staff and all those kind of messages. But if we could just re-emphasise that we're very open and welcoming getting those messages, and particularly our council colleagues, but all our people on the call today have got unique networks into communities that can reach people that maybe NHS traditional methods of communications wouldn't reach. So really just an offer and an underline that we're really here to support that important messaging. And I think maybe the final bit I would say was just thinking of the twin track that you mentioned, Adam, and in reference to portfolio. The IJB in the city, we have had a short paper on portfolio some time ago, but I think as it's going to become part of how we do business beyond this pressured period, with Sandra having a key, well, a leadership role in front of the unscheduled care portfolio, I'm keen that we take a bit of time as an IJB to understand the portfolio approach more deeply, and to understand the opportunities that it may bring for us as we move out of the emergency kind of phase more into the longer term. So how it helps us achieve our strategic intent. So I'll pick that up with Caroline Hiscox about maybe having a seminar or a discussion space with the IJB members, just so that everybody feels like when we're talking about portfolio, we will know what we're talking about. So that was all the points I wanted to make. But thank you very much, Adam. I see Mike's hands up. We'll bring in Mike.
Hi, thanks, Luann. It's just on the back of that, so it's an added bit because of the pressures that is on everybody, and that includes this board, that includes the Nhs Board, it includes Chief Officer, everybody. So the ask that I have got, because I have seen the opposite, is that during these pressures and these discussions, it's not just what you are saying, it is how you say it. And people are feeling extremely sensitive, extremely pressurized, and please think about how you phrase things, how you ask for things, rather than demanding, because that is going to take its toll. This ain't changing anytime soon. Nobody should think the next year is going to be only different for this. It's not. So yeah, we need to get our act together. Just an ask, and it is only my opinion.
Thank you, Mike. Wise words as ever, and brings me right back to the poem Sandra read out at the start. It's the workforce, it's the public, it's folk we meet in the shops, it's our families that are all people are really feeling it after 22 months. So the importance of taking care of each other and being kind, I think, is what I'm taking away from what you're saying there, Mike, and to really be looking after each other. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up or any other comments. So just on behalf of the IJB, thank you, Adam, for coming. We'll pick up the action about looking at making sure any derogations that need to are coming through our IJB structures, and really welcome your input today. And I hope you got that sense from all the questions that people are supportive, and we're very grateful for this whole system approach. And please use us as a way of getting the messages out. That's absolutely what, we're all keen to help. So thank you very much, Adam.
Yeah, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'm going to rejig the agenda a little bit because just to make sure we're quorate for the ADP discussion, I'm going to bring that forward to now because I think Kim Cruttenden's leaving early. So if we take the ADP item now, if we can, the investment work item 13, I will leave the meeting for that part and let Leslie take on chairing that. And then Emma, if you can let me know when that's concluded, I'll come back in and then we'll do the market facilitation update and the Appendix A discussion that we have left. Okay, so I will leave now.
Thanks, Luann. So we have before us item 13 to consider really the investment programme, quite a substantial, comprehensive piece of work, I think, that's been outlined for us in this paper. So first off, I wonder if maybe Simon might like just to say a few words of introduction to the report, and then we'll hear if there's questions or comment for it before we consider the recommendations.
Thanks, Leslie. For people who don't know me, I'm Simon Rayner. I'm the coordinator for the Alcohol and Drug Partnership within Aberdeen City. Members will know that alongside the public health emergency of COVID, the Scottish Government have also described the ongoing high level of drug-related harm and specifically the high level of drug-related deaths as a public health emergency. Members will also know that people affected by substances can be some of the most vulnerable within our community. This report sets out the funding that the Scottish Government has made available to alcohol and drug partnerships to deliver a national mission to reduce the harm of drug use. The funding has come in a number of processes, and the ADP has attempted to collate the opportunity into an overall programme that fits with our local delivery plan and our local needs. We're still awaiting confirmation of funding for supporting medication-assisted treatment standards. But meantime, the ADP has gone through a process of engagement and generating ideas and taking those ideas into a co-production process. So the ADP is seeking support and agreement on the recommendations of the overall programme and the specific recommendations that are listed. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Simon. Do we have any questions? So I think maybe Simon, there's a very stark statistic, about drug-related problems and mortality being 18 times higher in areas of deprivation across Scotland. And you say in the report that this is clearly evident in Aberdeen. And I think I think some of what we can see already is potentially the benefits of the impact of these investments. And I'm thinking particularly maybe around, the whole family approach that's being rolled out in terms of how that will maybe bring a kind of additional capacity in terms of the work that the ongoing work, because a lot of this work isn't new. It's just that we're trying to I think pull some of it together to be more impactful. Would that be right? Am I on the right track here?
Absolutely. I mean, our drug and alcohol services have evolved and developed over years as we sort of learned and understood more about what actually helps people. So I see this as an opportunity for us to consolidate and make our services more resilient, and in particular the whole family approach aspect starts us on a path which is more about prevention and early intervention, particularly when we're beginning to understand better that the root cause of substance use problems and other issues such as suicide, etc., are rooted in childhood trauma for a lot of people. So the whole family approach is the start of a sort of pathway that we want to try and have, which moves us from just reacting and trying to treat and support people, but get us into a space where the most vulnerable are supported from a very early point of view.
Okay, thank you. And we're hearing more and more, I think, about trauma-informed approaches, not just obviously in terms of this sphere of work, but like in terms of some work with child protection. There's a range of services really across the whole system that it's been introduced in.
Yeah.
Do I have any more? Do I have anybody that's got anything they'd like to ask Simon, or will we just move to the recommendations on page 105? So I'm not going to read them all out because there's rather a few. But are we in principle supporting this today? I think we are, yes. Okay, thank you very much for your time, Simon. And we look forward to hearing, how it all progresses.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
And Emma, if I can maybe just get you to call Luann back in, that'd be great. Hi, Luann, that's us. We've agreed the recommendations for Simon's paper in terms of the programme of investment for the ADP.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. And Teams worked, which is always wonderful when the technology works. Okay, so I think that means we have 2 items left. So we would go to item 12, which is the market facilitation update with Anne talking to this paper.
Yes, thank you. So you have for you a report that was requested around an update against the market facilitation plan. So what I have tried to do in the report is really just to provide the information that was requested. I was last here on the 6th of July this year, updating against this. So I've really tried to summarise what progress we've made since there, and also just to summarise the activity against the key things that are set out in the market facilitation plan for this year. So one of the key achievements, I suppose, really since July 2021 has been the consolidation of the Strategic Commissioning Programme Board and the creation of a commissioning work plan, clearly aligns the annual procurement plan. The Strategic Commissioning Programme Board provides a governance structure to ensure that all commissioning activity adheres to the commissioning principles that have been agreed by the Integration Joint Board, and that the commissioning activity is planned in a proactive way. The work plan affords the opportunity to ensure that all activity is tracked, planned and completed. I suppose we can't underestimate, I think, the work that has gone into that, and actually, as you'll see in the subsequent part of the report, that we have actually managed to achieve most of the commissioning activity that was set out, despite being in the midst of a pandemic. I'm not really going to refer to any of the other specific commissioning activity, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions on that if people have it. I suppose also just to draw to people's attention that our plan would be to review our market facilitation plan alongside the revised and refreshed strategic plan, just to see if there's any additional priorities that we need to add into there.
Thank you, Anne. It's a helpful overview of the paper we have. Open that up for comments, feedback, questions from folk today. John Tomlinson.
Yeah, thanks. And just a very simple question at 3.4, page 98, I think it is. It says the following ambitions are set out for the year 2021. Is that the right year on that? Or if that was for 2021, what is it for the current year? Is it just the same?
You're still on mute, Anne.
Sorry. Could you remind me of which bullet point you were referring to, John?
It's 3.4, page 98. Just the first line of 3.4.
So those, if in the, I think there's an appendix which outlines the market, the market facilitation plan, and it had these ambitions within the year 2020 to 2021.
Okay, and so then that adjusts each year, or are they just carried forward? I appreciate the appendix has the detail in.
So within the appendix, we had set out the priorities for each year, and I'm hoping that the update that I provided to you shows that we have achieved our ambitions around this year. And then on the market facilitation plan, there would be the subsequent year, and we will be working against those priorities for that year.
Okay, that's fine. Then so at the end of this year, you'll be able to report the full what you've achieved. Yeah, no, that was just to understand the structure. Yeah, thanks very much. That's great.
No, but it was just to say that what is detailed in the report is what we have achieved this year.
Okay, right. Thanks.
Which I hope is a reflection of a lot of activity that's taken place in the midst of a pandemic, I think.
Indeed, it's very impressive. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Anne. So I think the report gives a look back on what we've achieved, and then the appendix gives a look forward to what we'll report on next year. That's how I'm reading it. Is that right, Anne?
Yes, but as I was saying, I was drawing to what I was trying to do was to draw to people's attention that given the refresh of the strategic plan, we would automatically revisit that. And also, as part of our commissioning work plan, what you will see is that our work plan is reflected against the annual procurement plan. So Neil Stevenson and I work really closely together to make sure that all of our activity is aligned, so that we're not allowing any contracts to slip. So it's been quite a complicated process to get it all aligned and coordinated, but we're there now.
That's great, thank you, Anne, and really impressive to see what's been achieved over the past 12 months, definitely. Okay, we'll just go to the recommendations if there's no further questions from people. They're on page 97 of the pack. To note the content, note that the market facilitation will be reviewed in line with the strategy as Anne has outlined, and note that this market facilitation activity is linked and reflected in the annual procurement plan. People content with that?
Yes, agreed.
Great, fantastic. So I think that brings us then to our final item, which is the some questions on the Appendix A, which we'll take in private. But I just want to check that I haven't missed anything, because I feel like we've got through the agenda quicker than I'd expected. But I've covered all the items. Emma, I'm just looking to you to make sure, in amongst my scribbles, I've not missed something.
No, I think you're right, Chair. I think we've covered everything.
Okay, thank you. So
I'll stop recording if we're going into the exempt.
Thank you. So we'll conclude this public part of the meeting, and we will go into the private session for discussion on Appendix A.